Jake Morrison walked into the xenobiology classroom and felt every alien eye turn toward him. He was getting used to this by now, but it still made him uncomfortable. 3 months at the Galactic Defense Academy, and he was still the weird new. Species that everyone wanted to stare at. The classroom was huge, much bigger than anything back on Earth. It had to be large enough to fit students from dozens of different worlds. Some were tall and thin, like the Centaurians. Others were short and wide, like the Krogans. A few floated in special chairs filled with liquid, because they came from water worlds. Jake found his usual seat in the middle section, not too close to the front where Professor Zekthar might call on him, but not so far back that he looked like he was trying to hide. Lisa Harper was already there, reviewing her notes from last week. She was one of only 2 other humans at the academy, and Jake was glad to have someone from home nearby. "Morning, Jake," Lisa said without looking up from her tablet. "Ready for another fun day of learning about things that want to eat us?" "Always," Jake replied, settling into his chair. The furniture here was designed to fit multiple species, which meant it was not really comfortable for anyone. "What's on the menu today?" Before Lisa could answer, the door at the front of the classroom opened with a soft hiss. Professor Zekthar walked in, his 4 arms carrying different data tablets and specimen containers. The hive world insectoid was 8 feet tall and covered in a shiny green shell that clicked when he moved. His compound eyes could look in several directions at once, which Jake found both impressive and creepy. "Good morning, class," Professor Zekthar said in his buzzing voice. The translator device on Jake's collar turned the clicking sounds into English words. "Today, we will observe a live specimen from one of the galaxy's more dangerous worlds." A ripple of excitement went through the classroom. The alien students loved these demonstrations, probably because most of them came from safe, peaceful worlds where the biggest predator was something like a space rabbit. Jake and Lisa exchanged a look. They both knew that Earth animals were usually more dangerous than whatever the professor brought to class. "The creature we will study today is called a razor stalker," the professor continued, using 2 of his arms to set up a large metal container in the center of the room. "It comes from the jungle world of Vasta Prime, which is classified as a Class 8 death world." Several students made worried sounds. Class 8 was considered very dangerous by galactic standards. Jake almost smiled. Earth was classified as Class 12, but he did not mention this. He had learned that talking about Earth's danger level made his classmates nervous. The metal container was about 10 feet long and 6 feet wide. Professor Zekthar activated a control panel on the side, and the top became transparent. Jake could see something moving inside, but the angle was wrong to get a good look. The razor stalker is 6 feet in length and weighs approximately 200 pounds, the professor explained. It has retractable claws that can extend up to 8 inches and cut through most organic materials. Its bite force is strong enough to crush the bones of most galactic species. A Thraxian student in the front row raised one of his 4 hands. "Professor, is the containment field strong enough to hold such a creature?" "Of course," Professor Zekthar replied, his voice carrying that slight buzzing sound that meant he was confident. "The force field is rated for Class 9 containments. It could hold something much more dangerous than a simple jungle predator." Jake leaned forward to get a better look at the creature. When the force field activated with a blue shimmer, he could finally see the razor stalker clearly. It looked like a cross between a large cat and a lizard, with sleek black skin and bright yellow eyes. Its claws were currently retracted, but Jake could see the sheaths where they would emerge. The creature was beautiful in the way that efficient predators often were. Every part of its body was designed for hunting and killing. Its muscles were clearly visible under its skin, and its head moved constantly as it scanned the room full of potential prey. But what caught Jake's attention was not how dangerous the creature looked, It was how the creature was behaving. While Professor Ziegthar talked about its hunting methods, the razor stalker was doing something that Jake recognized from nature documentaries back home. It was testing its prison. The creature moved around the container in a careful pattern, touching different spots with its nose or paws. It was not random movement. The razor stalker was checking every inch of its containment, looking for weaknesses. It pressed against the force field at different points, testing the strength. It even tried jumping against the top, seeing if the barrier had any give to it. Jake had seen this behavior before. On Earth, smart predators did this when they were trapped. Bears, big cats, even some birds would test their cages methodically. The really smart ones would remember what they learned and use it later. As you can see, Professor Ziegthar continued, the creature shows typical predator behavior patterns. Note how it moves constantly, conserving energy while remaining alert. The other students were taking notes on their tablets, recording what the professor said. Jake noticed that most of them stayed in their seats, even though they were 20 feet away from the container. The force field was supposed to be completely safe, but his alien classmates were taking no chances. Lisa leaned over to whisper to him, "It's testing the containment." "I know," Jake whispered back. "Smart animal." "Too smart," Lisa replied. The razor stalker suddenly stopped moving and looked directly at Jake. For a moment, their eyes met across the classroom. Jake felt a strange recognition pass between them. The creature tilted its head slightly, the way Earth predators did when they were trying to figure something out. Then the moment passed, and the razor stalker went back to its systematic testing of the force field. The creature's natural habitat consists of dense jungle terrain with limited visibility, Professor Ziegthar explained. It relies on stealth and ambush tactics rather than direct confrontation. When hunting, it will stalk its prey for hours before striking. A Centaurian student raised her hand. "Professor, what does it usually hunt on its home world?" "Excellent question. The razor stalker typically preys on large herbivores, some weighing up to 500 pounds. However, it has been known to attack smaller predators when food is scarce." Jake did some quick math in his head. If this thing normally hunted animals that weighed 500 pounds, every student in this classroom would be easy prey. Most of the alien species here were physically weaker than humans, and humans were not exactly the toughest things on Earth. The thought made him pay closer attention to the creature's movements. The razor stalker had completed its circuit of the container and was now focusing on one particular spot near the front corner. It kept returning to that spot, pressing against the force field with increasing force. "Jake," Lisa whispered, "look at the power indicator on the containment unit." Jake looked where she was pointing. A small display on the side of the container showed the power levels for the force field. The numbers were in alien script, but he had learned enough to read basic displays. The power level was fluctuating slightly, dropping and then returning to normal. "Should we tell the professor?" Lisa asked. Jake considered it. Professor Ziegthar was an expert in xenobiology, and he had been doing this for years. Surely he would notice if something was wrong with the containment system. Besides, what did two human students know about alien technology? But the razor stalker had definitely found something. It was no longer testing random spots. All of its attention was focused on that one corner where the power readings were unstable. "Let's wait and see," Jake decided. "Maybe it's normal." "Professor." Ziegthar was now explaining the creature's social structure and mating habits. The alien students were completely focused on the lecture, taking detailed notes. None of them seemed to notice that the predator had stopped listening to the professor and was now completely focused on escape. Jake watched the power indicator continue to fluctuate. Each time it dropped, the razor stalker would press harder against that spot. The creature had figured out exactly what was happening, even if the students had not. In conclusion, Professor Zekthar said. The razor stalker represents a perfect example of evolution, producing an efficient predator. Every aspect of its biology serves the purpose of hunting and survival. The alien students began putting away their tablets, preparing for the end of class. But Jake kept watching the container, and the razor stalker kept testing that weak spot in the force field. Something was definitely wrong, and Jake had the sinking feeling that they were about to find out just how efficient this particular predator really was. The lights in the classroom flickered. It happened so fast that most students did not even notice. Professor Zekthar was still talking about the razor stalker's hunting patterns when the power fluctuation rippled through the Academy's electrical systems. The overhead lights dimmed for just a second before returning to normal brightness, but Jake noticed. He had been watching the power indicator on the containment unit, and he saw the numbers drop sharply when the lights flickered. The force field around the razor stalker shimmered like heat waves on a hot day. The razor stalker noticed too. The creature had been pressing against the weak spot in the corner, testing the barrier with steady pressure. When the force field wavered, the predator's entire body went rigid. Its yellow eyes widened, and its head snapped up with sudden alertness. Jake felt his stomach drop. He knew that look. He had seen it on the faces of wolves in nature documentaries, on hunting cats at the zoo, even on his neighbor's dog when it spotted a squirrel. It was the look of a predator that had just realized its prey was within reach. "Professor," Jake said, raising his hand. Professor Zekthar continued his lecture without looking in Jake's direction. The razor stalker's primary advantage is its patience. It can remain motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Professor," Jake said again, louder this time. Several alien students turned to look at him with annoyance. In galactic culture, interrupting a teacher was considered very rude. Lisa shot him a questioning look, but she could see the tension in his face. The lights flickered again, longer this time. The power indicator on the containment unit showed another sharp drop, and the force field shimmered more visibly. A few students finally noticed and looked around nervously. The razor stalker crouched low in its container, muscles coiled like springs. Its claws extended slowly from their sheaths, 8 inches of razor-sharp bone that gleamed under the classroom. Lights. The creature's breathing had changed, becoming deeper and more controlled. Jake stood up from his seat. "Professor, we need to evacuate the classroom now." The entire class turned to stare at him. Professor Zikthar's compound eyes fixed on Jake with what looked like irritation. "Mr. Morrison, please take your seat. The containment system is perfectly safe." "The power levels are fluctuating," Jake said, pointing at the container. "The creature knows it. Look at its behavior." Several students did look at the razor stalker, and a few made nervous sounds. The predator was no longer the calm, contained animal they had been observing. Every line of its body screamed danger. "The containment field is rated for Class 9 threats," Professor Zekthar said firmly. "A simple power fluctuation cannot compromise it." Jake wanted to argue, but he could see that the professor would not listen. The alien instructor had complete faith in his technology. He could not imagine that a primitive jungle predator might be smart enough to exploit a weakness that his sensors had not detected. Lisa stood up beside Jake. She had been watching the creature too, and she did not like what she was seeing. "Maybe we should at least call security," she suggested. "That is not necessary," Professor Zekthar replied. "Please, both of you, take your seats so we can continue the lesson." The other students were getting nervous now. They could feel the tension in the room, even if they did not understand what was causing it. A group of Centaurians near the front moved their chairs back a few feet. 2 Thraxian warriors started looking around for exits. The razor stalker had stopped moving entirely. It crouched in the center of its container like a statue, every muscle tensed and ready. Its yellow eyes tracked across the room, studying each student, measuring distances, calculating angles of attack. Jake sat down slowly, but he kept his eyes on the creature. He had made his warning. If the professor would not listen, there was nothing else he could do except be ready for what was coming. As I was saying, Professor Zekthar continued, the razor stalker exhibits remarkable patience in its hunting behavior. It will wait for hours or even days for the perfect opportunity. The words had barely left the professor's mouth when they whew. Lights flickered a third time. This time, the power fluctuation lasted for 3 full seconds. The overhead lights dimmed to almost nothing before slowly brightening again. The force field around the razor stalker's container wavered like water, its blue glow fading in and out. And in that moment of weakness, the razor stalker moved. Creature exploded forward with incredible speed, slamming into the weakened section of the force field with all of its 200 pounds. The barrier held for a split second, then shattered like glass. The sound was like breaking crystal mixed with an electronic scream. Sparks flew from the containment unit as the force field generator overloaded. The razor stalker landed on the classroom floor in a crouch, free and deadly. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Students and teacher alike stared at the impossible. Sight of a Class 8 predator loose in their classroom. The razor stalker stared back, its yellow eyes bright with predatory intelligence. Then chaos erupted. The Centaurians screamed in their high-pitched voices and scrambled for the exits. Peaceful plant eaters had no instincts for dealing with predators, except to run. They knocked over chairs and trampled each other in their panic to escape. The Thraxian students, despite coming from a warrior culture, froze in terror. They were trained to fight other thinking beings with weapons and tactics. A wild predator, operating on pure instinct, was something outside their experience. Even the tough Krogans stumbled backward, reaching instinctively for weapons they were not allowed to carry in class. Their thick hide and natural armor meant nothing against an enemy they had never faced before. Professor Zekthar hit the emergency alarm with one of his 4 arms, while his other hands frantically worked the controls of a backup containment device. But the equipment would take time to activate, and time was something they did not have. The razor stalker did not hesitate. It had been planning this moment since the force field first weakened. The creature's head swiveled as it selected its target, and its choice was coldly logical. It would go for the closest group of prey, the ones who looked weakest and most frightened. The Centaurians. 5 of the plant-eating aliens were huddled together near the front of the classroom, too terrified to move toward the exits. They were small and fragile, with no natural defenses except their speed. But fear had stolen even that advantage from them. The razor stalker launched itself forward with lethal grace. Its powerful legs propelled it across the classroom in a single bound, claws extended and ready to tear flesh. The Centaurians saw death coming and could only watch in frozen horror. But the creature never reached them. Jake Morrison had been watching the razor stalker from the moment it broke free, while every other being in the room ran away from the predator or froze in terror. Jake did something that shocked every alien witness. He ran toward it. Jake's chair crashed to the floor as he vaulted over the desk in front of him. His feet hit the ground running, and he sprinted directly at the airborne predator. While 20 other students fled in panic, one human charged straight into danger. The collision happened in midair. Jake intercepted the razor stalker just as it reached the peak of its leap toward the terrified Centaurians. He wrapped his arms around the creature's torso and used his momentum to drive both of them away from the intended victims. They hit the floor hard, rolling in a tangle of human and alien limbs. The classroom fell silent, except for the sound of a struggle on the floor. Every student, every alien eye was fixed on the impossible sight before them. A human, a member of a species most of them considered primitive and weak. was fighting hand-to-hand with one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. And he was not losing. Lisa Harper had her data tablet out and was recording everything. Her hands shaking, but her voice steady as she whispered encouragement. "Come on, Jake. Show them what a human can do." The Razor Stalker was fast, but Jake was faster. The creature was strong, but Jake was stronger. When the predator slashed with its claws, Jake twisted away from the attack. When it tried to bite, Jake grabbed its head and controlled the movement. Most shocking of all, Jake was not fighting with panic or desperation. His movements were controlled, efficient, almost casual. This was not a terrified prey animal fighting for its life. This was another predator, one that the Razor Stalker was beginning to recognize as the more dangerous of the two. Professor Zekthar watched in complete bewilderment as his understanding of the galaxy turned upside down. According to everything he knew about biology and evolution, this should not be possible. The human should be dead already. But Jake Morrison was not just alive. He was winning. The Razor Stalker, apex predator of a Class 8 Deathworld, began to show the first signs of fear. It had never encountered anything like this strange alien from an even stranger world. Nothing in its evolutionary history had prepared it for a prey species that fought back with such skill and power. The security alarms were still blaring, and Jake knew that help would arrive soon. He just had to hold on a little longer and keep the creature from hurting anyone else. He looked up at his stunned classmates and managed a tight smile. "Don't worry," he said, his voice calm despite the deadly predator writhing in his grip. "I've got this." The alien cadets stared at him in speechless amazement. The fight lasted exactly 97 seconds. Lisa Harper timed it on her data tablet while she recorded everything, though to the terrified alien students watching, it felt like hours. Jake and the Razor Stalker rolled across the classroom floor in a deadly dance. The creature was everything the professor had described: fast, strong, and armed with natural weapons that could cut through metal. Its claws left scratches in the reinforced flooring as it tried to gain purchase for an attack. But Jake was something the creature had never encountered before. He was a product of Earth, a world where survival meant being tougher, faster, and more determined than anything else that wanted to kill you. The Razor Stalker slashed at Jake's face with its extended claws. On its home world, those claws could slice through the thick hide of a 500-pound herbivore. They should have opened Jake's throat in a spray of blood. Instead, the claws scraped across Jake's skin and left only shallow scratches. His classmates watched in stunned disbelief as wounds that should have been fatal barely broke the surface. Jake's skin was not just tough. It was dense, thick, and backed by muscle and bone that had evolved under Earth's crushing gravity. "Impossible," whispered a Thraxian student. "Those claws can cut through our armor." The Razor Stalker seemed to share the alien's confusion. It stared at the minor scratches on Jake's face, its yellow eyes wide with something that might have been shock. The creature tried again, this time aiming for Jake's arms. Jake caught the creature's foreleg in his hands and twisted. The motion was smooth and controlled, like someone adjusting a piece of machinery. The Razor Stalker yelped in pain and surprise as Jake's grip threatened to snap its bones. "He's stronger than it is," Lisa said into her tablet, her voice filled with amazement. "Jake is actually stronger than a Class 8 predator." The alien students heard her words, but they could not process them. In their understanding of the galaxy, physical strength was determined by size and evolutionary specialization. The Razor Stalker was a perfect killing machine, designed by millions of years of evolution to be the ultimate predator. Jake Morrison was just a human from a recently discovered world. He should not have been able to match the creature's speed, let alone exceed its strength. But that was exactly what was happening. The Razor Stalker tried to bite Jake's throat, its jaws opening wide to reveal teeth like curved daggers. The creatures. Bite force was measured in thousands of pounds per square inch, enough to crush the bones of any known galactic species. Jake caught the creature's head in both hands and held its jaws shut. His fingers dug into the spaces behind the creature's jaw muscles, finding pressure points that paralyzed its ability to bite. The razor stalker thrashed wildly, but it could not break free from Jake's grip. Professor Zekthar watched in complete bewilderment. Everything he knew about biology said this was impossible. The human should have been dead within seconds of the encounter starting. Instead, Jake was dominating a creature that could challenge an entire squad of trained soldiers. The human is using techniques, the professor said, his voice filled with scientific curiosity despite the danger. Those are not random movements. He knows exactly where to grab the creature to cause maximum pain and control. Lisa nodded while keeping her tablet focused on the fight. Humans have been fighting predators for millions of years. We learned every trick there is. The statement sent a chill through the alien students. They were beginning to understand that Earth was not just another dangerous world. It was a place where even the thinking species had to be predators to survive. Jake rolled on top of the razor stalker and pinned it to the floor. The creature was still dangerous, still trying to claw and bite, but Jake had found its weak points. He kept one hand on the creature's throat, applying just enough pressure to restrict its breathing without killing it. His other hand controlled the creature's head, keeping its teeth away from anything vital. "Submit," Jake said quietly, his voice calm and steady. The word was spoken in English, but the meaning was universal. It was the sound a dominant predator made when establishing control over a rival. The razor stalker understood it immediately. For the first time since breaking free from its container, the creature went still, its yellow eyes fixed on Jake's face, and what it saw there made it freeze completely. Jake's expression was not one of fear or desperation. It was the cold, controlled look of something that was higher on the food chain. The razor stalker had encountered this look before, but only in the eyes of creatures much larger and more dangerous than itself. It had never seen that expression on the face of something so small. The realization that it was not the apex predator in this situation hit the creature like a physical blow. "That's right," Jake said, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge. That made several alien students step back. "I'm from Earth. We don't run from things like you. We hunt them." The classroom fell completely silent. Even the emergency alarms seemed muted by the weight of what the alien students were witnessing. A human, a member of a species they had considered primitive and weak, had just made one of the galaxy's most feared predators submit to him. Ben Torres, the third human at the academy, chose that moment to walk into the classroom. He had been running late for class and missed the entire fight. He took one look at Jake sitting on top of the razor stalker and shook his head. "Seriously, Jake?" Ben said, his tone more annoyed than surprised. "We've been here 3 months and you're already wrestling the wildlife?" The casual response broke the spell that had fallen over the classroom. Jake grinned and looked up at his friend. "It started it. They always do," and replied, pulling out his own data tablet to record the aftermath. "Lisa getting good footage?" "Every second," Lisa confirmed, still filming. "This is going to be educational for everyone." The alien students stared at the 3 humans in complete confusion. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything they believed about evolution, biology, and the nature of predator-prey relationships. But the humans were treating it like a minor inconvenience. "Is this normal behavior for your species?" asked a Centaurian student, her voice shaking with shock. Ben looked at her with genuine surprise. "Wrestling predators? Not really normal, but not exactly rare either. Every human kid grows up hearing stories about ancestors who fought bears. And giant cats with nothing but sharp sticks. Bears? Squeaked another student. Big furry predators with claws and teeth, Lisa explained helpfully. They weigh about 800 pounds and can run 30 miles per hour. Early humans used to hunt them for food and clothing. The alien students made various sounds of distress. The idea of hunting something like the razor stalker was beyond their comprehension. The idea of hunting something even larger was simply terrifying. Jake could feel the razor stalker's heartbeat slowing down as the creature accepted its situation. The fight had gone out of it completely. It had recognized Jake as the dominant predator and was now waiting to see what he would do next. "Don't worry," Jake said to the creature, his voice gentle now that the danger was over. "I'm not going to hurt you. You were just doing what predators do." The razor stalker's eyes showed something that might have been confusion. In its world, dominant predators usually killed or drove off their rivals. This strange alien was showing mercy, which was a concept the creature did not understand. Professor Zekthar finally found his voice. "Mr. Morrison, how did you know to grab the creature in those specific locations?" Jake looked up at the professor while maintaining his grip on the razor stalker. Basic anatomy. All predators have the same weak points: throat, joints, pressure. Points behind the jaw. You learn this stuff growing up on Earth. You learned to fight creatures like this as children? The professor asked, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. "Not exactly like this," Jake admitted, "but the principles are the same. A predator is a predator, whether it's from Earth or anywhere else. They all have the same basic design flaws." The sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor announced the arrival of Academy security. Jake looked toward the door and sighed. "Guess I should let them handle this now." He slowly released his grip on the razor stalker, ready to grab it again if it tried to attack. But the creature just lay there, staring at him with something that looked like respect. The security team burst through the door with weapons drawn, expecting to find chaos and carnage. Instead, they found a classroom full of silent alien students, and one human sitting calmly next to a completely docile razor stalker. The team leader, a grizzled Xinti veteran, stopped in his tracks. "What happened here?" Professor Zekthar gestured helplessly at Jake. The human. He subdued the creature with his bare hands. The security team stared at Jake in disbelief. They knew exactly how dangerous a razor stalker could be. They had trained for months to handle one safely, and even then, they expected casualties. Jake stood up slowly, keeping his eyes on the razor stalker. The creature remained motionless, watching him with wary respect. "It's safe now," Jake said simply. "Just get it back into a proper container, and it won't cause any more trouble." As the security team moved in with their containment equipment, Jake walked back to his seat like nothing unusual had happened. The alien students watched him in stunned silence. Their entire understanding of humans forever changed. The silence in the classroom stretched on for what felt like hours. 43 alien students sat in their chairs, staring at the spot where Jake Morrison had just wrestled a Class 8 predator into submission. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They were all trying to understand what they had witnessed. Jake brushed dust off his uniform and looked around at his classmates. "Are we going to continue with the lesson?" he asked Professor Zekthar. "I think we still have 20 minutes left in class." The question broke the spell that had fallen over the room. Several students made choking sounds. A few began talking in excited whispers. 2 Centaurians fainted and had to be helped by their friends. Professor Zekthar's compound eyes were fixed on Jake with an expression that might have been scientific fascination mixed with terror. "Mr. Morrison," he said slowly, "perhaps you could explain what just happened." Jake shrugged. "The containment field failed. The creature escaped. I stopped it from hurting anyone." Pretty straightforward. Straightforward, repeated a Thraxian student in a voice filled with disbelief. You call wrestling a razor stalker straightforward? Well, yeah, Jake said, looking genuinely confused by the question. What else was I supposed to do? Let it eat the Centaurians? The 5 Centaurians who had been the creature's intended targets. All made grateful sounds and bowed toward Jake. In their culture, saving someone's life created a bond that lasted for generations. They would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. Lisa Harper was still recording with her tablet, capturing the reactions of their classmates. You guys really didn't know humans could do this? She asked the room in general. Of course. We did not know, said a Xinti student, his feline features twisted with confusion. Humans are supposed to be weak. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious predator adaptations. Ben Torres laughed. No obvious adaptations? Dude, we're walking, talking predator adaptations. Every part of a human body is designed for hunting and fighting. That cannot be true, Professor Zekthar protested. Humans are omnivores. You eat plants as well as meat. True predators are specialized for hunting only. Yeah, we eat plants. Ben agreed. But we also hunt everything else. Do you know what we call animals that are bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than us? The alien students shook their heads. Dinner, Ben said with a grin. Several students made distressed sounds. The idea of hunting creatures more dangerous than yourself was beyond their understanding. In their worlds, prey ran from predators. The idea of prey that hunted back was a nightmare concept. Jake sat down at his desk and winced slightly. The fight had been short, but the razor stalker's claws had left some painful scratches on his arms. Does anyone have a first aid kit? He asked. Professor Zekthar immediately activated his emergency medical supplies. A small robot rolled over to Jake and began scanning his injuries with blue light. The robot screen displayed the results, and the professor's eyes widened as he read them. These injuries are extremely minor, the professor said, his voice filled with amazement. The creature's claws barely penetrated your skin. How is this possible? Dense bone structure, thick skin, muscle mass distributed for impact absorption. Lisa explained, reading from her tablet. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world with lots of dangerous animals. We're built to take damage and keep fighting. The medical robot finished its scan and dispensed a small tube of healing gel. Jake squeezed some onto his scratches and rubbed it in. Within seconds, the wounds began to close. There, he said, rolling up his sleeves to show unmarked skin, good as new. A vegan student raised her hand tentatively. Mr. Morrison, when you were fighting the creature, you seemed to know exactly what to do. Have you fought razor stalkers before? Never seen one before today, Jake replied. But predators are pretty much the same everywhere. They all have the same weak spots, the same basic attack patterns. Once you understand how one works, you can handle most of them. Most of them? Squeaked a small Centaurian. Well, you have to adjust for size and special abilities, Jake explained. But the fundamentals don't change. Grab the throat, control the head, watch out for claws and teeth. Basic stuff. The alien students exchanged horrified looks. What Jake was describing as basic knowledge was advanced combat training by galactic standards. Most species would need months of preparation to face a single dangerous predator. Jake was talking about it like a simple skill that anyone could learn. What is the most dangerous animal on your world? Asked a Thraxian warrior, his voice respectful. But curious. Jake and Lisa looked at each other and started laughing. Ben joined in, and soon all 3 humans were chuckling at some private joke. That's a trick question, Lisa finally said. The most dangerous animal on Earth is another human. The silence that followed this statement was different from before. It was not the silence of shock or confusion. It was the silence of beings who had just realized they were sharing a classroom with something truly terrifying. "You fight each other?" whispered a Hive World student. "All the time," Ben said cheerfully. "We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've gotten really good at it." "But you are the same species," Professor Zekthar protested. "Surely you do not hunt your own kind." "Not for food," Jake agreed. "But we compete for resources, territory, ideological differences. Humans are really competitive. We'll fight over almost anything." A Xinti student leaned forward with interest. The Xinti were one of the few warrior races in the galaxy, and they understood the concept of fighting for honor and territory. "What weapons do you use in these conflicts?" "Started with rocks and sticks," Lisa said. "Then we invented metal weapons, chemical explosives, projectile weapons, energy weapons, nuclear weapons, biological weapons, cyber weapons. We're pretty creative when it comes to finding new ways to fight." "Nuclear weapons?" The professor's voice cracked on the words. "You have weapons that can destroy entire cities?" "Had them for about 80 years now," Jake said casually. "Most major nations have them. We use them to keep each other from starting big wars." "You prevent wars by threatening to destroy everyone?" A Centaurian student sounded like she might faint again. "It works," Ben shrugged. "Mutual assured destruction. Nobody wants to start a fight they can't win." The alien students were beginning to understand why Earth was classified as a Class 1-2, Death World. It was not just the dangerous animals and harsh environment. It was the fact that even the intelligent species was designed for warfare. "Mr. Morrison," said the Xinti student, "in your opinion, how would a human perform against other galactic predators?" Jake thought about it seriously. "Depends on the predator. Size matters, but technique and intelligence matter more. Most of the really dangerous stuff we've seen in class would be challenging but manageable. The key is understanding their behavior patterns and exploiting weaknesses." "What about multiple predators?" asked a Thraxian. "That's harder," Jake admitted. "But humans are pack hunters too. We work together really well in combat situations. 3 or 4 humans with proper coordination could probably handle most threats." Lisa was taking notes on her tablet while they talked. "We should write a paper on this," she said. "Comparative analysis of Earth predators versus galactic classifications. I bet Professor Zekthar would find it fascinating." The professor made a sound that might have been agreement or terror. He was still trying to process the fact that one of his students had just defeated a creature that required a full security team to handle safely. "There is one thing I do not understand," said a student from the peaceful garden worlds. "Why did you help us? You could have escaped with the other humans and been safe." Jake looked at the student with genuine surprise. "You're my classmates. We're on the same team. Of course I'm going to help you. But we are different species." The student persisted. "We are not your pack." "Everyone in this room is part of my pack," Jake said firmly. "We train together, we learn together, we graduate together. That makes us family." The concept of interspecies loyalty was alien to most of the students. In their cultures, you protected your own kind and viewed other species as competitors or potential threats. The idea that a human would risk his life to save aliens was completely foreign to their thinking. "Is this normal human behavior?" asked Professor Zekthar. "Protecting the pack?" "Yeah, pretty normal," Ben said. "Humans have strong protective instincts. We'll fight to the death to defend our friends and family, even if those friends are not human." "Doesn't matter," Lisa said. "If you're part of our group, we'll protect you. That's just how we're wired." The alien students looked at each other with a mixture of amazement and fear. They were beginning to realize that humans were not just physically dangerous. They were also fiercely loyal to their chosen allies. "I think," said Professor Zekthar slowly, "that we need to revise our understanding of human psychology as well as human physiology. Jake stood up and stretched, his muscles already recovering from the fight. Does this mean we're done with class for today? Because I have combat training in 20 minutes, and I need to change clothes. The casual way he mentioned combat training sent another ripple of unease through the classroom. To Jake, wrestling a deadly predator was just a warm-up for his real training session. Class dismissed, Professor Zekthar said weakly. The news spread through the Galactic Defense Academy like wildfire. By the next morning, every student and instructor knew about the human who had wrestled a razor stalker with his bare hands. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same and equally unbelievable. Jake Morrison tried to go about his normal routine, but it was impossible. Everywhere he went, alien students stopped talking and stared at him. Some moved out of his way with respectful fear. Others approached him with questions they were too nervous to ask. "This is getting weird," Jake said to Lisa and Ben as they walked to their morning combat training class. "Yesterday, I was just another student. Today, everyone acts like I'm some kind of monster." "You kind of are, from their perspective," Lisa pointed out. "Remember, most of these species evolved on safe worlds. The idea of fighting predators for survival is completely foreign to them." Ben nodded toward a group of Centaurians who quickly moved aside as they passed. "Look at it from their point of view. Yesterday, they thought humans were weak newcomers. Today they know we're apex predators who could kill them without trying." "I would never hurt any of them," Jake said, frustrated. "They're my friends." "That's exactly why they're so confused," Lisa explained. "Predators aren't supposed to be friendly. In their experience, dangerous things are enemies. They don't know how to handle a dangerous friend." Commander Vexler was waiting for them at the entrance to the combat training facility. The Xinti officer was 7 feet tall and covered in orange fur that barely concealed his powerful muscles. His species were natural warriors, one of the few in the galaxy that understood the concept of honorable combat. "Cadet Morrison, Commander," Vexler said, his voice carrying the rumbling undertones of a large predator. "Report to my office after training. We need to discuss yesterday's incident." Jake saluted. "Yes, sir." The commander's yellow eyes studied Jake with something that looked like professional interest. "That was well done, Cadet. Clean takedown, minimal damage to the target, no unnecessary violence. Your instructors have taught you well." "Actually, sir, I've never had formal training in handling dangerous animals," Jake replied. "I just did what seemed natural." Commander Vexler's ears flattened against his skull. "You subdued a Class 8 predator using untrained instincts?" "Yes, sir." The Xinti officer was quiet for a long moment. In his culture, warriors spent years learning to face dangerous prey. The idea that someone could do it naturally was both impressive and terrifying. "Report to my office immediately after class," the commander repeated. "We have much to discuss." Combat training that morning was different from usual. Jake's alien classmates watched him with new eyes, paying attention to every movement he made. When he sparred with practice weapons, they studied his techniques. When he demonstrated hand-to-hand combat forms, they took detailed notes. "Is it true that all humans fight like you?" asked a Thraxian student during a break. "More or less," Jake said, toweling off sweat from his workout. "Some are better fighters than others, but we all learned the basics growing up." "What basics?" The student leaned forward with intense interest. Jake thought about it. "How to throw a punch, how to grapple, how to use your body weight as a weapon. Basic stuff for dealing with bullies or dangerous situations." The Thraxian's 4 eyes widened. "You teach combat skills to children?" "Of course. How else would they defend themselves?" Several other students had gathered to listen. They exchanged worried looks at Jake's casual attitude toward childhood violence training. On our world, said a vegan student, children are taught to avoid violence at all costs. We believe that fighting is primitive and unnecessary. That works if you live in a safe place, Jake agreed. But Earth isn't safe. Kids need to know how to protect themselves. Lisa joined the conversation from across the training room. Jake's being modest. Human children don't just learn basic self-defense. They learn strategy, teamwork, competitive sports that simulate combat. By the time we're adults, we've been training for conflict our whole lives. Competitive sports? Asked the Centaurian. Games, where teams try to defeat each other. Ben explained, finishing his own workout. We turn everything into a competition. Sports, business, politics, even video games are about winning and losing. The alien students looked increasingly uncomfortable. The picture of humanity that was emerging was not of a peaceful, civilized species. It was of a race of natural-born warriors who had somehow learned to cooperate with each other. After training, Jake reported to Commander Vexler's office. The Xinti officer's workspace was decorated with weapons from a dozen worlds and trophies from successful hunts. It was the office of someone who understood the warrior mindset. Sit down, Cadet, Commander Vexler said, gesturing to a chair. Across from his desk. I want to discuss your performance yesterday. Jake sat down and waited. He had learned that military officers liked to control conversations. I have been reviewing the security footage of the incident, the commander continued. Your response time was excellent. Your technique was flawless. Your judgment was sound. But what interests me most is your attitude. My attitude, sir. You showed no fear, no hesitation, no doubt about your ability to handle the situation. That level of confidence usually comes from extensive experience with dangerous situations. Jake shrugged. I grew up on Earth, sir. Dangerous situations are pretty normal there. Commander. Vexler leaned back in his chair. Tell me about your childhood, Cadet. What kind of dangerous situations? Nothing too serious, Jake said. Wild animals in the backyard, bullies at school, natural disasters, crime in the cities. Standard Earth stuff. Standard Earth stuff, the commander repeated slowly. Cadet, I have studied the military histories of 47 different species. Most of them consider facing a single dangerous predator to be an extraordinary event, requiring extensive preparation. You describe it as a normal part of childhood. Jake was beginning to understand why his alien classmates found humans so unsettling. I guess we have different definitions of normal, sir. Indeed we do. Commander Vexler pulled up a file on his computer. This is the official Galactic Alliance assessment of human military capabilities. It was written before your species joined. The Alliance, based on limited observations of your conflicts. Jake read the summary on the screen. The report described humans as moderately advanced, but physically weak, with primitive weapons and outdated tactics. It recommended that human military units be assigned to support roles rather than frontline combat. This assessment is wrong, Commander Vexler said bluntly. Completely, dangerously wrong. After yesterday's demonstration, I believe humans may be the most effective warriors in the galaxy. I'm just one person, sir. You can't judge an entire species based on one incident. Can't I? The commander's eyes gleamed. Tell me, Cadet, how many other humans at this academy could have done what you did yesterday? Jake thought about it honestly. Both of the others, easily. Lisa and Ben are both better fighters than me, actually. All three of you could have handled that situation? Yes, sir. Any adult human could have, with maybe a few exceptions. Commander Vexler was quiet for a long moment. Cadet Morrison, I want you to understand the significance of what you're telling me. You are saying that any random human could defeat a predator that requires a full security team to handle safely. When you put it like that, it does sound pretty impressive, Jake admitted. It is terrifying, the commander corrected. From a military perspective, it means that human soldiers are worth 10 times what our current assessments suggest. From a political perspective, it means that every other species in the galaxy has been dramatically underestimating your capabilities. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Are you saying that's a bad thing, sir? Not bad, necessarily. But it is significant. Commander Vexler leaned forward. I am recommending that the Academy create a new training program. Human combat techniques will be offered as an elective course for interested students. You want me to teach other species how to fight like humans? I want you to teach them how to fight with humans. There is a difference. The commander's expression grew serious. War is coming, Cadet. The hegemony forces have been building their fleet for months. When the fighting starts, our species will need to work together to survive. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about the hegemony, a militant alliance that wanted to conquer or destroy all other spacefaring civilizations. Our alien allies need to understand what humans are capable of, Commander Vexlar continued. And humans need to understand how to work with species that are not natural warriors. This training program could save lives on both sides. I'll do whatever you think is best, sir. Good. Classes start next week. Professor Zekthar will be assisting with the biological and psychological aspects of the curriculum. Jake almost smiled. How is the professor handling all this? He has requested a transfer to a safer assignment, Commander Vexlar said dryly. Apparently, teaching humans has become too dangerous for his peace of mind. As Jake left the commander's office, he found Lisa and Ben waiting for him in the corridor. Word had already spread about the new training program, and they were excited about the opportunity to share human combat techniques with their alien classmates. This is going to be interesting,